Welcome back to New Jersey Now. I'm Mark Bonamo. The Garden State may be home to some of the toughest anti-bullying laws in the country. Sadly, violence and bullying continues to be a major problem in New Jersey schools. Licensed marriage and family therapist John Paul Simon, director of Care Plus New Jersey Clinical Interventions in Schools, joins me now with important advice on how to address the issue. There was recently a study from WalletHub that shows that New Jersey's got the fourth worst bullying problem in the United States. We have a history of bullying in New Jersey. There's the unfortunate Tyler Clemente incident years ago. Could you please tell me about the problem with bullying in New Jersey?
I mean, you identified that catalyst, that event, that tragedy that sparked and really put into the forefront the bullying epidemic, if you will, within our country. And after that, a lot of social, emotional learning components into curriculum, into school culture was really emphasized. And I know with New Jersey, being ranked that high, it also say their efforts in terms of mental health awareness, mental health support, almost parallels that point. It was like a piece that just made sense in terms of looking at beyond academic success, how the school institution provides support in terms of development for, young adults, adolescents, and citizens as a whole, to be able to say, I can make it through this institution, not only receiving the education that I need, but more so the experience around socializing, being able to develop healthy habits, and this idea of being around peers who might not necessarily understand that, and, with the bullying, might actually inhibit that piece. It sounds scary, but in terms of the reality of how youth develop, I think it is a challenge that most young people face these days.
The reports here are unique because they talk about the economic impact that bullying has. Please elaborate on how bullying when you're younger can hurt people economically later.
Through a systemic lens, everyone's development, like I mentioned earlier, is often connected to the institutions that foster growth. Within the education system here in the States, the idea is to be able to learn your strength, learn your lane, if you will, and eventually shift into a vocation where you grow a career. Now, if environment causes bullying, it often leads to consequences such as kids not wanting to attend that school. So they might not even be emotionally available to learn those skills that are necessary to create a career for themselves. And as a result, not only lacking the education, but in the job field, there comes social skills that are required, networking skills that are required, and being a victim of bullying, you sort of lose out in that opportunity where you find yourself not being able to receive the max potential of the educational experience.
Other after effects of bullying could lead to an increased proclivity to commit crime, drug abuse. We don't want to ignore the emotional and psychological impacts of bullying. How does this fit into the economic metrics as a whole in terms of the effects of bullying?
You mentioned a couple of things, whether it be turning into substance use, oftentimes being connected to criminal or disruptive behavior in our society. That can't be isolated. Oftentimes our judicial system or even our society will look at those behaviors and isolate them as that's just a bad apple engaging in the wrong type of behavior. But oftentimes that behavior is self-preservation. It's their version of what coping looks like. It's survival mode for them because of that lack of option. I learned how to cope in a healthy manner. I learned that through resilience or through grit, I can make my way through a tough situation, negotiate my way out of conflict, and still find myself with growth opportunities, including the financial growth that many Americans strive for. Being bullied sort of like removes you from that. And I'm not saying it's automatic, but you're kind of left to, when you're backed into a corner, it's almost like you got to do what you have to do. I don't think many of these connected cases, these individuals are looking to engage in criminal behavior as their primary option for growth. I think it's almost, this is all I really have left. And that might be the case depending on the socioeconomic background, perhaps in their neighborhood. But oftentimes I think it's a narrative that a lot of victims of bullying sort of are told, and perhaps they tell within themselves that because I've been this victim or I've suffered this, I don't really have any positive options. But that's not necessarily the case.
How can you tell if your child is being bullied?
I think one thing to think about is that there isn't a necessary playbook or a checklist to go down when you're looking for signs of bullying. You look at small transitions or shifts that occur within your child. So there's experts out there, there's educators out there, but for the parents, it's being able to take inventory of knowing your child's personality, knowing their baseline, and if you notice even the smallest shift, so if you got a kid in Little League or if you have them participating in extracurricular activities, that loss of interest or diminishing interest might be a sign. We mentioned that socialization piece earlier. You might have a student who is generally jovial, hanging out with his friends, or he or she might be in multiple clubs. All of a sudden, attendance drops in those clubs, participation dissipates in those clubs. And then you could connect that to the attendance piece too, because what student, what child wants to go to the place where the bullying is being harbored or where their bully is in that same chemistry class or gym class as them?
How do you think parents can work with schools in order to work somehow to advocate against bullying?
For me, it's two words. It's education and advocacy. Oftentimes, because of something as stark as bullying and as intense as that incident, for whatever reason, sometimes parents may feel that the school is not doing the best that they can do, or the parents might feel helpless. Oh, how could this happen to my child in a place that's supposed to have safety as a paramount objective aside from learning? And I think an important component is, first, to the parents, being able to just study on what the bullying investigation process looks like. In 2011, the HIB standards were created. So there is a process for each school. HIB, that abbreviation, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. There are coordinators, there's identified investigators, and there's an identified process that each school district has in their policy. And I don't think a lot of parents have that general knowledge. So first, being able to read up on the law, being able to, whether through conversation with school admin, guidance counselor, calling up to the board, being able to say, who are these identified folks? What does that process look like? And then, I hate this cliche, but also being able to trust that process. And another component I think that I see go on when these investigations occur, what's the expected outcome? I think sometimes it's not the justice system. Parents will say, well, justice wasn't served, or they'll receive a conclusion that the bullying was unfounded, which is huge. And oftentimes it's connected to, the bullying has to be connected to a disability or something that's significantly marked about that student. Or perhaps the school tells the family, you know, actually this has been a conflict. Your child has also retaliated, so therefore it's not bullying. So being able to construct an appropriate narrative, and schools should take the initiative and explain that to parents also, that while they are tied to the guidelines and the policy of an investigation, we're not just looking for one outcome. We're not waiting for that kid to be suspended. I think it's more so a conversation about how do we navigate this situation now, and for both the perpetrator, if you will, and the victim, how do you support both those students? In bullying, there are two direct victims, the bullying victim themselves and also the perpetrator. These are adolescents not developed, engaging in harmful behavior.
How can people learn more about the work of Care Plus New Jersey?
Care Plus New Jersey specifically is based in Bergen County. It's a community mental health agency that services the greater Bergen County and also neighboring counties such as Passaic, Essex, Hudson. And your local community mental health agencies such as Care Plus not only has services within their own facilities or satellites that provide mental health support, what schools are also doing, because there is this mental health advocacy, is contracting with places like Care Plus to create school-based contracts. So you have clinicians and mental health teams placed within your actual district. So to have that safety of a therapist in the school mitigates a lot of the barriers that can exist for folks.
John Paul Simon from Care Plus New Jersey, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you.
We'll be right back.